G'day everyone. No visuals in this video because I am recovering from a bout of COVID and I look like shit and I can't be fucked. I'm frankly surprised I'm even doing a video at all, but I'm well enough now to make myself useful and I do want to discuss this topic. So you probably saw the hoo-ha around Todd Sampson's In Development documentary. His project planned to touch on far-right radicalisation as just one subsection of an overarching exploration of social media's impact on society. Then it came out that Todd had actually invited National Socialist Network Führer Tom Sewell to be an interview subject on the doco. Todd even went out on the 20th of April, might I add, Hitler's birthday no less, to interview Sewell and get this happy snap with Blair Cottrell. I wrote an article about this because I myself had been asked to participate in this project, and once I'd seen Sewell and Cottrell posting to Telegram, I promptly told the producers to take their documentary and boot off. Anyway, I won't go over the whole article again, but please read it. The link is in the description. One response I got this time round from people who don't generally understand where I'm coming from when I say this kind of thing is, well, you talk about them all the time, so you platform them too. That's the same thing. So I feel like people need a bit of a chat on platforming, but also on neo-Nazism. Preferably a thought-terminating, cliche-free one, which I admit a lot of the left are fucking terrible on when they discuss Nazis. I think it's always good to revisit what constitutes platforming, or the provision of a dangerous platform, or who it is bad to platform and when. I think it's something I'm always personally happy to discuss and defend, because actually a lot of it is fluid and changing all the time. But let's consider what neo-Nazism is actually seeking from a platform first of all. Looking back historically, the modern format of neo-Nazi activism was invented by George Lincoln Rockwell and his American Nazi Party in the 1950s and 60s.
I consider myself, in terms of Bolshevism, I would be the Lenin to Marx. And in terms of Christianity, I'm the St. Paul to Hitler's Christ. In other words, I am the spreader, the world spreader of a doctrine which Hitler originated, and it was crucified, dead and buried, and it is now rising.
Rockwell's model of recruitment is about generating media spectacle. It entailed creating completely disingenuous stunts purely to put his politics of anti-Semitism and white supremacy into the headlines. Now, he knew his politics were so universally rejected that they wouldn't be getting out there at that level any other way. The only point was to capture the attention of an imagined fringe of white men among that broadly disgusted mass audience who might be interested, and in turn to recruit that fringe. It's essentially a manipulation of the media cycle as a recruitment tactic because it wasn't about an honest appeal or a dialogue, it was a fundamentally dishonest one. For example, Rockwell really energised Holocaust denialism as a tool for hype and recruitment, but he actually didn't believe in it at all. He just knew that Holocaust denialism made for a good spectacle that the press would absolutely discuss in horror, and that offered a starting point to get people into the habit of questioning the Jews. Anyway, Rockwell got shot in the face by another neo-Nazi and now he burns in hell for all eternity. Lol. Neo-Nazi thinkers who followed his generation included people like William Pierce, who authored the Turner Diaries, which inspired the Oklahoma bombing, and later Louis Beam, author of the Leaderless Resistance essay, which inspires lone wolf terrorists to this day. In fact, some say that the first person to popularise the term lone wolf in this context was former KKK Grand Dragon Tom Metzger, who was instrumental in spreading Beam's Leaderless Resistance doctrine among the worldwide white supremacist audience. This is the first great pendulum swing, I think, which neo-Nazism has always been caught in ever since then. We're operating between two poles. On one hand, the Rockwell strategy of cultivating spectacle for recruitment, and on the other, the Beam/Pierce tendency to give up on the spotlight and funnel Nazis into radical, violent acts. This is a holding pattern that neo-Nazism is stuck in. You get a wave of people who are savvy at working the press, and the press gets stars in its eyes and forgets it's only looking at the next iteration of shit-stirring racist dog. And voila, the attention seekers put neo-Nazism in some new form back in the headlines. Then the attention wanes and their successors think, fuck it, I'm turning terrorist. Then another wave of spectacle creators replace them, or they themselves shit back to the attention cycle, and on it goes. This holding pattern also applies to Todd Sampson's two guests, Blair Cottrell and Tom Sewell. They're actually perfect examples of it, I think. In 2016, Blair was heading up the United Patriots Front, a clandestinely neo-Nazi-run successor to Reclaim Australia that hid its neo-Nazi politics in favour of drum beating about Muslims, just because that was the reactionary spectacle of the day and leveraging it would come with good numbers. Come 2017, the UPF had been disbanded when it lost its Facebook page. The attention cycle of the Patriot movement had waned, and the fringe of that movement were being scooped up by Tom Sewell to form the basis of white supremacist group the Lad Society. And that group eschewed the limelight in favour of training in private. Kind of the same old neo-Nazi story. The attention phase turns into the let's train for race war phase. Last year, however, Sewell tried his hand at an attention cultivator phase of his own with Lad Society's successor group National Socialist Network, which more publicly espoused its Nazi values and really did a perfect replication of Rockwell-style tactics, using media stunts to draw kids to their group for recruitment purposes. They'd all but lost their own ability to advertise on mainstream social media platforms, so they needed prestige media to play their middleman for an imagined fringe of white men at the edge of the resistant masses. Just like the situation that George Lincoln Rockwell had found himself in. So the bushwalks began, and the attacking of media security guards over the coverage they received, and so on. It was all very effective for the National Socialist Network and for Sewell. What it actually relied upon was uncritical coverage of the groups from mainstream media outlets that knew they were covering something dangerous and salacious, but hadn't really bothered to think about how to cover it in a way that didn't add fuel to the fire. The most egregious example of this was a current affair. They did a pretty breathless, salacious piece on the National Socialist Network after their Grampians bushwalking stunt, which kind of wasn't bad in and of itself, but then when Sewell attended their office to confront them the next day, they allowed a black security guard to go out front to escort him out, who got attacked by Tom Sewell, and then they, brace yourself, fucking arranged a follow-up interview with him. Now, Sewell, of course, just sat there sig-hailing and yelling about Hitler and such. And they chopped their stupid, useless interview up into ribbons for airing on the show on the second day. But that didn't matter because we're in 2022 and Sewell had just recorded the footage himself. From that two-part series of shows, including an assault over 2 days, the National Socialist Network reportedly recruited many young new kids, possibly hundreds. Their Telegram channel certainly exploded, and that is an example of platforming of a Nazi group that does work to their ends and does not really deal them any damage at all. At some point in this mix, Blair Cottrell got left behind. He and Sewell fell out over the explicit race hate politics of National Socialist Network. Blair Cottrell was criticising them for that.
Neo-Nazi race hate, including, but not limited to, skinheadery, KKK cosplay, and sig-heiling neo-Nazi kids. It's not nationalism. It's certainly not National Socialism, right? The aesthetic of nationalism right now is really bad. It's really bad, and it needs to improve. Even I don't want to be a part of it, you know? I mean, really? Sig-hailing Nazi kids and chanting Ku Klux Klan and running around in masks? What the fuck? What the fuck, man?
Blair by this stage was just a has-been spectacle cultivator of yesteryear. You know, he's kicked out of most neo-Nazi circles. By this stage he was out of work and mostly living with his mum, unless some white nationalist chick was content to let him move in with her and loaf off of her for a bit. He was mostly just annoyed I think, that he wasn't the one in the limelight, because really all they were doing is replicating his rhetoric from earlier years, but just a bit more overtly. But he did also make a good point. What NSN were doing was dumb, and it was indeed bound to end in tears. Something that did cause them many tears was an example of excellent mainstream media coverage of neo-Nazis, and it came out later. It was the Nazis Next Door coverage, including a 2-part 60-minute special by Nick McKenzie. It involved an infiltration of the NSN headquarters out in Rowville and a lot of secret footage filmed of them. When this coverage was released, it was no less salacious than anything A Current Affair had done, probably much more so, but it also dealt a huge blow to the NSN, leaving many of its members unemployed and leading to them getting evicted from their Rowville property within a day of its release. So now we understand that Nazis are using mainstream platforms for disingenuous, underhanded and ultimately dangerous means. We understand that it's not bad to tell the public about what they're doing, but you shouldn't include them as willing participants in that coverage, and you should also offset the inherent salaciousness of that coverage by finding ways to deal their group a blow if they're active. And we understand that ignorant coverage of Nazis without communicating an understanding of their history may well only help bolster their image. On this channel, on what I do, I don't talk to the cunts, but I do talk about them sometimes, yeah. Let's be clear, for one, this is Scumsville here. People know they're going to get talk about some real fucking dregs around this dusty little corner of the internet. And this is not a platform that will expose these people to a higher plateau of coverage than they would currently enjoy. I mean, for fuck's sake, they get more numbers on their Telegram channels than I do on my little YouTube. I'm small fry, mate. This is niche specialist stuff. For another, my critique of them, my occasional exposure of them, and my participation in anti-fascist activism means that this coverage can also come at a cost to them. This is highly informed content about neo-Nazis. And I note Louis Theroux's reflections on this for The Guardian ahead of his latest series. He discussed the very prescient fact that a lot of these far-right figures now occupy such protected and huge media networks of their own that traditional questions of platforming are a little unstable or outdated. For example, if the only question that arises from platforming is giving a boost to a Nazi, well, you're not even necessarily doing that anymore. In fact, many of these figures in the US that someone like Theroux would look at enjoy larger audiences than many prestige or mainstream media outlets. But beyond that question lies a situational one. What specific person are we talking about, for what specific kind of project, to what degree of involvement, and why? There's actually two quite distinct problems, I think, with Blair Cottrell and Tom Sewell as potential guests for someone like Sampson. The problem with including Sewell is that he's a very dangerous, active neo-Nazi recruiter who could well inspire acts of violence at some point in the future, making it wildly irresponsible to give him anything he wants. The problem with including Cottrell is only that he's a fucking has-been and a compulsive liar. He hasn't mattered in neo-Nazism for years. Most of them hate his guts by now, and yet he still wouldn't be able to give you an honest accounting of his place in fascism because, well, he's such a delusional little narcissist, but for one, but also because he is a fascist. Fascists are terrible people to ask about their own ideology. After all, it's an inherently dishonest ideology. It's all about disguising your intentions until you have enough power to lay them out with an according measure of violent force. They don't even tell each other the truth in private, mate. Trust me. You'll never come across a bigger punch of compulsive liars than these fascists. So hopefully now you understand the nuance of the platforming thing. You know, I don't think it's that you can't ever do it at all, or ever, or do it in an effective way. You know, there's always a way, situationally. But not with these two. Not with this project, particularly not with Sewell. Not if you're having them on as guests. Not if you're going to take a pic broing down with Cottrell on Hitler's birthday. That is straight up a bad idea. There's no way that can eventuate in a good project. It shows me you have no fucking idea what you were doing. And hey, I could have told Sampson this if he'd bothered to ask me beforehand, or any of the other anti-fascists that he actually invited to contribute, like Slackbastard or White Rose Society. But he didn't. He legit thought he knew better, making him just a rich dilettante vulture doing curiosity tourism of the far right for cool footage, in my view. Now, with all that out the way, Blair Cottrell had a chat about this subject, and me, on Telegram, and I thought it was funny. So let's finish up by looking at what this has been said and having a laugh at it.
This guy, Tom Tanuki, I think his real name is Tom Stephen, but I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I'm not really sure who he is. Yeah, I think his home address is 8 Smith Street, Fitzroy, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure who he is. Yeah, I think his tax sign number is 849390387. I'm not really sure.
This guy's popped up a few times over the years. I think he tried to make some sort of living out of imitating me or something, making some sort of crude imitation of me or my old political group.
Actually, sir, the character that I played was a separate nationalist altogether. He was the five-flag general of the million-flag patriots.
Our patriotism intensified. We developed from powerful triple patriots into unbashable neo-patriots. Salute! Salute! They said it couldn't be done, but they are all shit cunts.
Indeed, in his story, you were a separate character who he had bashed multiple times. So there's a clear distinction between the character I was playing and who you were.
But I've never really paid much attention to the guy because to me he always just seemed like a highly medicated fat mess. And that's not to be offensive, that's my objective observation. Like,
listen, this is a guy who routinely gets suicidally depressed, but he won't go and take meds because, like, meds are like, you know, a Jewish plot to destroy the white man. So, like, I am not actually, to my detriment, medicated at all. Like, as in, there's probably a good anxiety drug or two that might really save my life a bit. But, you know, to my detriment, I've yet to go and go through the lengthy process to seek that out. This guy would really benefit from maybe just one or two little meds, but unfortunately, he has convinced himself that that would be the worst thing for him. Fat, look, I'm going to take it. You know, I could lose some weight. Perhaps I should, you know, base my entire identity around having big lumps on my arms. Would that motivate me, Blair?
And the more I look at the guy, the more I just kind of feel sorry for the guy. It's kind of a sad case, right? So I can't really spend a lot of time, you know, commenting on that particular guy. But what do I think? I don't know. What do I think of the guy? I don't know the guy. You know, it just kind of seems like a sad case to me. The more I look at these screenshots that people are sending me, the more I think he just seems like a junior version of Avi Yemeni, but on the left, right? Without even, I don't have access to Twitter, but without even going onto it and seeing it, I guarantee this guy will have some sort of GoFundMe link or subscribe to my Patreon, buy my t-shirts, right? That kind of thing. It's just like a mini grift, a mini Avi of the left.
These guys say that a lot, and to be fair, I do derive some sort of a joy or a laugh out of the fact that Avi Yemeni is used by absolutely everyone. I mean, you can obviously assume why it is that neo-Nazis dislike him so much, but, you know, from everyone's perspective, he's sort of used as a comparison point for why you aren't to be trusted or believed. So lowly is Avi Yemeni that, you know, everyone's his negative comparison point. But anyway, I think just generally I won't be lectured to regarding my, you know, income stream or the things that I ask for in exchange for the work I do by a man who's spent most of his adult life, you know, being taken care of by his mother, as far as I'm aware. I don't think that's someone who really gets the right to tell me about that. And, you know, besides, anyway, this guy's an noble take on why, you know, we're all grifters. Anyone that asks for any kind of, you know, compensation for the work that they do. That's all, you realise that's all very much defined by the fact that he just can't do that because he's Blair Cottrell and he's done everything that Blair Cottrell's done. So, you know, back in the day when he asked for finances from people to be sent straight to his bank, the banks actually shut his account down, you know. Blair just can't do that. So the fact that he can't do that is why he's so principled over this subject. Don't forget that. You know what I mean? Anyway, hopefully that's the end of, like, catty, sassy, back and forth Blair. You know, like, slay Queen Blair. Like, I kind of prefer him when his usual default mode of not talking about lefties at all. He's not very good at this. You're not cut out for it, bro. Stick to fucking pretending to be Ziz and being a cringe cunt, man. And making your arms have big lumps on them. Good luck, bro.
A junior version of Avi Yemeni, but on the left.